Hey everybody, welcome back to Archetypical and our AI chatter. Today we're going to hit on obviously NVIDIA stock, Google's Gemini somewhat going woke, and ChatGPT having some fun glitches as well. Why don't we bring Ken and Marty in? Welcome everybody to episode 5. Happy to keep this rolling. And why don't we start with quick intros again? Marty, why don't we have you kick us off?
Hi, everybody. Marty Galp. I'm a retired Air Force guy who did ops research for 20 years on active duty and then came into the commercial world to get into insurance and banking. And now I'm at Archetype leading the data science practice here.
Ken.
And I'm Ken. I'm a reforming academic economist and data science technology. I don't know. I can't call myself an expert, but I'm okay.
So why don't we start off with NVIDIA? Obviously, they crushed their earnings in the last quarter, and their stocks took off even more. I was looking at kind of the latest of some of their stocks. What blows my mind is just the past year, they're up 233%, let alone then in the past 5 days, they're up even 6% from that, 32% in the past month. Do you guys think at this point, I mean, somebody's got to compete with them eventually, but it seems like nobody's even close at this point.
It's going to take a while. It will happen. We were talking just a few minutes ago, Marty. The infrastructure of the CUDA environment kind of protects NVIDIA's place, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to play in a CUDA environment in order to really utilize their chips to the best of its ability. Unless you go a completely different path.
I'm going to ask a dumb question. What is a CUDA environment exactly?
Ooh, now it's going to push. Marty, you want to take it, or you want me to give it a
Give it a try, Ken?
All right. So my understanding is it's a way for it's a middleware language to allow a language like a Python to most efficiently use the NVIDIA chip for certain algorithms. So basically, for an algorithm to use a GPU, it has to be rewritten in a way that instead of having effectively linear processing, it's sort of a simultaneous multiple calculations at the same time. And so you basically have to rewrite the algorithm to do math differently. And the CUDA environment facilitates that movement. Marty, you have anything you wanted to add to that?
NVIDIA chips are all about matrices and operating on matrices very efficiently. And we think of matrices in, an XY pattern, but computers don't think that way. They think linearly. So CUDA is going to help translate that also and do it in a way that works very efficiently on their chips, on NVIDIA chips. That's why if you use like TensorFlow, you have a CPU version, which is just TensorFlow, or you have TensorFlow -GPU, which is optimized for GPUs. So you're depending on the library you're using, you may have to do significant rewriting of your code, or you may have to do very little. And that's what ideally you don't have to do much rewriting. And if you use the right libraries, that's what you get the benefit for.
And that's unique to the NVIDIA chips?
CUDA is NVIDIA's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Makes
well,
sense.
they allow other it's open sourced in its sort of rights to use, and it's I believe a pretty permissible open source. So you can make your chip CUDA compatible.
Right. There you go.
Well, I think in the coming weeks we'll have some exploration into some of the possible competitors that are coming into the market that may disrupt NVIDIA a little. We'll see, and maybe have some conversations with some of those. But why don't we talk about Google Gemini and their kind of image creation tool that I say went woke just in the aspect of apparently it was unable to create any images with white people in it. And they eventually paused it while they.
This is not a deepfake. This particular, the rest, yes, this is real. We're actually here.
Yeah, exactly. And it was
That's how
amazing.
you can tell.
I saw some that were obviously like the founding fathers, that it was like, well, whether we want to really admit it or not here, all the founding fathers were definitely all white guys at the time. So, but it was just interesting. Obviously, they had to pause it. And then you've also seen the ChatGPT article, Ken, that you sent over to me. That's kind of displaying some of like their issues over at ChatGPT. I mean, I saw that it says has been displaying erratic behavior, responding in Spanglish, repeating phrases such as "happy listening" multiple times, and even delivering unhinged rants in response to simple questions. These issues go beyond the usual error and hallucinations acknowledged by AI developers, signaling a potential breakdown in the AI's functioning. What's your guys' take on kind of that overall, and even your
Well,
synopsis of it?
I love their response of, we are investigating reports of unexpected responses from ChatGPT, and we're continuing to monitor the situation, which translates to, we don't know what's going on, guys. I think did ChatGPT have a couple too many the night before? I mean, it's comical to see some of this stuff.
Well, it's
Oh,
winter. It might be like in the Spanglish case, it might be heading down to Mexico for a couple days and getting lost.
To get some sun.
He gets it done. I wonder. I was surprised in one of the responses that the immediate feedback is so quickly brought back into the model serving. Like basically the thumbs up, thumbs down rating system was sort of being used so heavily to then mark whether the answers were favorable or not favorable depending on what you needed. I didn't think it would be that sensitive, and my suspicion is it's just being trained by humans, and some humans like that answer and they get thumbs up, and then it's marked is labeled as a good one, and it serves it up again. Marty, any takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it. It's the same thing. Why is one movie do well and one movie do poorly? You get the right people to go watch it, and they give it, and it gets more positive reviews, and you get that tidal wave effect. And Ken, that's a really good point. It could definitely be that. I
do you think?
wasn't aware they served up answers based on responses from people who got answers. That's news to me.
Yeah, the article that we're mentioning definitely has
Yeah,
that in
it was,
Okay, gotcha.
it's
yeah.
constantly
Maybe I
evolving.
should read the article before we talk about it next time.
No, that's no fun. But that's interesting. I'm a avid ChatGPT user, and to be honest, I don't think I've used that thumbs up or thumb down thing
Yeah, I
once.
haven't either. No.
So I'd be curious on the stats on who's using that actual feature in it, but maybe it's higher than
That's the same reason why Gemini is having, it can't, it's biasing towards a certain group, was that clearly whoever's using it is pushing towards a certain group, and then that group becomes underrepresented. It's the same as credit scoring models have been for since the beginning of credit scoring models, where race and ethnicity were often, biased negative. It's because
Yeah.
more often than not that you know that's what the model was being trained on.
yeah.
And so it's the same problem. um, Frankly, I mean, if you look at commercials these days, the underrepresented groups are massively
Way
overrepresented,
overrepresented. Yeah.
and,
Yep.
and so it's not surprising that the handful of models image creation is bias is heading that way, because I imagine it's being used for similar purposes.
Yeah.
Um, and that's going to continue to happen, um, which probably makes a case for not letting the model learn anything. Once you get it set, leave it alone, right? Like
Yep.
don't allow feedback to greatly influence what's being served up.
Or
Yeah.
if you have feedback, there's got to be some, I don't know if an appeal process or an oversight process to say, hey, this feedback is warranted and this feedback is not. Now that becomes a huge scale problem. So you're going to want to automate that, which you're going to be back in the same boat all over again. I mean, this is the problem with these things. These all work out on, onesie twosies, and we can make fun of these couple examples, but what about all the things that are happening that look more realistic and they're coming through,
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing that it was kind of hitting, was the challenges of maintaining an AI model that's responding in real time users.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of the like, what is your guys' take on how can developers even better anticipate or mitigate these types of issues?
I I maybe the thumbs up, thumbs down is slightly too simplistic as a way to do this.
Right.
It works nicely for, if I call the customer service agent ratings from 1 to 5, am I likely to hire this person? That's just deltas, I know, because I do it a lot. But and that works pretty well. But maybe ChatGPT needs a more sophisticated feedback mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Something a little. I haven't come up with an idea yet, but we can noodle on it.
It almost seems like you'd have like an AI chat GPT that is like responding to users and then another one that's overseeing that one. That's the one correcting it.
I mean, that's
Well,
kind
and
of
you asked how do you prevent it? It's testing, but you normally test on your bigger populations, your bigger groups, so you don't hit those edge cases. And you can test forever because you can keep dreaming up weirder and weirder edge cases, and you'll never get them all.
Yeah. And so like with AI platforms like ChatGPT becoming integral parts to various applications, how do
Mm-hmm.
such like unpredictable behaviors impact users' overall trust in it? And then also like the ethical responsibility of companies like OpenAI, where like if it's giving bad answers that are being used and is in applications, like how does that impact them even still?
Well, we were talking not last week during this, but at another meeting where Air Canada just lost a lawsuit because their chatbot gave recommendation that didn't work.
Yep.
And their response was, well, you shouldn't have listened to the chatbot. It's like, well, why do you have the thing there in the first place? So, companies are going to start, having to, figure this out. If we put a chatbot out there, but we put all kinds of caveats behind it and it's not good, people aren't going to use it or use our product. So you have to be upfront with it. And maybe you have, I'm a big advocate of human in the loop,
Yeah.
every so often you got to check, make sure train ain't going off the rails, because it's not a good time to figure that out when the train is sideways heading to the station.
Yeah. I always feel like the idea of kind of generative AI and even these large language models is kind of trying to mimic the human brain
Mm-hmm.
in just many levels. But there's a part of that I believe that we don't even fully grasp even now the human brain to the level that we should, to be able to be shocked when things like this happens with ChatGPT or Gemini, that like things go awry when
Yep.
it's still a machine.
well,
Well, another
it's
thing you can do to
very
help yourself out is check your sources. If you get an answer from ChatGPT, check it, and it doesn't, not even if it doesn't make sense, just if you're going to use it for something where you don't want to be embarrassed, check it in another source, even if it's as simple as a Wikipedia lookup, to make sure, does this make sense? Is this on the right track, or test it? That's, I think some of the, like Gemini now, is if you ask it for sources, it's more willing to give you sources. I did that. I asked for 4 and it gave me 4 of them, and 3 of them were good. And one of them was completely wrong. It just,
Hmm.
it makes mistakes.
This is also a problem of sharing models, right? Like over time, as we have our own model, it's less likely to give us. We could smack it from some behavior one time, and it's going to forever be fixed. But if we're sharing models, then we're trying to fit an on average thing to a specific person, and we see it with the image creator, language types. And so it makes a case for everybody having their own much more specific version of these types of tools.
Hmm.
We mentioned on one of the other episodes that in a future state we all have our own LLMs, which means we all have our own sort of GPU type things. And we started
Mm-hmm.
this session talking about why is NVIDIA stock going bananas. Well, that's it, right? Is that these LLMs are going to give you, generative AI is going to give you better answers when it's got more of your own data to be trained on, right? Which means that it's not just a silly little box that we write, give me the summary of this thing. It's watching what I do on my phone, and it's how I interact in Gmail, and how I write, and maybe even how I listen to things, and my Audible and my Pandora. Yes, I'm a Pandora, not Spotify guy. but it's an age. That's telling my age, right? Um, but
I still have an AM radio, so don't feel bad, Ken.
there you go. But that's the solution to the problem, right? The solution to the problem is we all have our own version of this, and then you have no one to blame but yourself.
Yep.
Yeah. I was shocked. My wife, who's a big skeptic of anything AI, machine learning, technology, which cracks me up, she's a big fan of this podcast called 1,000 Hours Outside. I think it's the title of the podcast. This is all about just getting your kids outside more for 1,000 hours in a year. And they bring on guests, and it's really interesting. And they recently brought on a psychologist, I believe. I can look up the name and I'll put it in the details below again, but it was all about AI and how AI is going to be used for a lot of psychologists and their patients to create these chatbots for individual patients that, like, as they're going through any sort of mental crisis, they can actually access this chatbot at all times and be able to have conversations as if it's with the psychologist, and go that route for kind of a mental health. I think there's also some scary directions that could go of making way too much relationships with technology, but that's totally, I could see even that individual component of like even the patient side.
I mean, again, I think there's an unlimited number of really good uses of this stuff, and that one might need human in the loop for a little while.
Yeah, seriously.
Unless we want to live in the Matrix, because that would be the next step.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, that gives us time here on this one, but thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Share, subscribe, like, smash that like button, right, Ken?
I like that.
And comment below on kind of your view on a lot of this and where you see kind of some of these AI trends going and whatnot. So thanks again for tuning in, everyone. See you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.